There's a lot of dormant, missing, and just straight up dead gaming franchises out there. That's what makes crossover games so interesting. It gives franchises and characters in this position a shot at relevance, even if it means they'll fall right back into obscurity when all is said and done. That's not to say it hasn't worked out sometimes. Pit debuted in Super Smash Bros. Brawl 17 years after his last starring role in the video game, and he went on to get his series revived, by the man that resurrected him no less. Strider's probably the poster example of this within the Capcom vs. games. His incredible popularity in Marvel vs. Capcom has been officially stated to have been what resurrected his series on not one, but two separate occasions. But some characters end up as crossover mainstays for so long, they inevitably have more appearances in crossovers than they do their home series. There's no fighting game character that exemplifies this more than Capcom's iconic succubus, Morrigan Aensland. Morrigan is, for better or worse, the face of the Darkstalkers series, Capcom's trailblazing send-up of monster media tropes thrown into a fighting game. This wasn't always the case though. Earlier on in the series, Dmitri Maximov was arguably the series protagonist. Whether it was her striking design, playful moveset, or more obvious features that contributed, Morrigan rose in popularity so fast that by the third entry in the series, the legendary vampire savior, she was positioned as the most important character in the series. Morrigan is a succubus born in the late 1600s in Scotland. She was taken in as an infant by Belial Aensland, the ruler of the Mackay realm. Belial foresaw that the Mackay realm would be in mortal danger soon, and no one of his bloodline would be born in time to stop this threat. Sensing immense power within the young Morrigan, he instead placed his faith, and by extension the hopes of all Mackay in her. That immense power Morrigan held, however, needed to be dealt with in the meantime. Being so powerful and so young, there was no way for Morrigan to possibly control the power she held, potentially having the ability to not only destroy herself, but all around her, including Mackay. To combat this, Belial took Morrigan's power and split it into three parts. Morrigan would retain 1/3, Belial would hold on to another third, and the last part would be cast away into a pocket dimension. I'm sure that last one won't become a problem down the line. As she'd mature into a woman, Morrigan would grow bored of nobility and the life within castle walls, frequently going on secret escapades to the human world in search of excitement. One such escapade happened to occur right when an extraterrestrial power arrived on Earth, Pyron. After Pyron's defeat at the hands of Dmitri, Morrigan would return to the Mackay realm to grave news. Belial had passed away, leaving her not only his third of her sealed power, but the Mackay realm itself to rule. This power vacuum in Mackay would also lead to the resurrection of Jeddah, which would then set into motion the events of Vampire Savior, and also introduce a curious new succubus into the mix with a slight resemblance to Morrigan. Morrigan was, along with Felicia, one of the earliest conceived characters for the first Darkstalkers game, the development team deciding on having a cat girl and a female vampire. However, when the team decided on Dimitri's design, the suggestion was floated instead to make her a succubus, since they already had a vampire. On top of energy projection with her trademark Soul Fist projectile, Morrigan's most notable combat-related quirk is being able to shapeshift her wings into various tools and weapons, which is utilized for quite a few of her moves throughout the years. Morrigan is at first glance a by-the-numbers shoto. She has a fireball and an anti-air uppercut, but gets some fun twists atypical of the archetype, like a command grab, and a unique forward dash that would go on to inspire other characters like Guilty Gear Xeno. With Morrigan being so popular, and the Marvel vs. series expanding to include Capcom characters beyond Street Fighter, Morrigan might have been the single most obvious Capcom side addition to join the roster in the first Marvel vs. Capcom in 1998. With Darkstalkers as a series never really progressing past Vampire Savior, Morrigan's pretty much lived on exclusively through crossover games, such as Project Cross Zone, Cross Edge, and even random cameos like the Dreamcast port of Gunbird 2. Probably the single most memed-on aspect of the character, however, is her sprite. It's a pretty decent, really well-animated sprite, but boy did Capcom manage to get a ton of mileage out of it, being used for nearly all of her Capcom fighting game appearances outside of Pocket Fighter. It doesn't stand out too much in Marvel vs. Capcom, but that's definitely not the case in Capcom vs. SNK, where she sticks out like a sore thumb even among the other reused CPS2 sprites. Perhaps a video subject for another day though. Morrigan's voice actor in the Darkstalkers series and all of her fighting game appearances up to Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is the late Yayoi Fujimoto, better known by her stage name Yayoi Jinguji. She also voiced Devilot in Puzzle Fighter, Tanbu in Marvel 1, and the Great Fairy in the Nintendo 64 Zelda titles. Sadly, she passed away in 2017 due to an undisclosed illness. May she rest in peace, and her voice performances live on. Though Morrigan debuted in the third Capcom Vs. game, she stuck around for every single one after, so this is gonna be one of those long haul episodes. Kick back, get comfortable, and join me as we take a deep dive into all of Morrigan's appearances in the Capcom Vs. series. Morrigan's character theme in Marvel 1 is an original piece composed specifically for the game as opposed to a remix of any of her Darkstalkers themes. It's an interesting choice, especially when it would have been so easy for them to remix Deserted Chateau or her Darkstalkers Revenge theme and call it a day. Thankfully, it's also a pretty good track. While it is original, it very much sounds in line with the previous Darkstalkers themes, featuring a piano as the lead instrument. It sounds pretty classy, and it fits Morrigan pretty well, I'd say. So, Morrigan's been souped up a fair bit from Vampire Savior for Marvel, but how does that translate in a game where everyone else is kinda cracked too? Solar Racer covers a lot of screen space. She has some of the best mobility in the game. She has some pretty fast normals, all things considered. But she has a really low health pool though. She doesn't really deal all that much damage. And Morrigan is pretty hugely dependent on meter, since her meterless damage is pretty awful. Like with the Street Fighter characters, Morrigan's moveset is made up of souped up versions of attacks she has in Darkstalkers. We'll talk about why that's the case a bit later, as unlike the Street Fighter characters, there's some additional content from Morrigan's Vs. series power boost. For example, Morrigan's standing close heavy punch in Darkstalkers now becomes her launcher, with the small spikes in Darkstalkers being traded for a giant axe springing up from the ground instead. Because of that move now being her crouching heavy punch, her traditional crouching heavy punch from Darkstalkers, Necro Desire, is now a command normal, being done with down forward and heavy punch. Next up is Mysterious Arc, done with down forward and heavy kick. This was her close heavy kick in Darkstalkers. Next is Shell Kick, done with down and medium kick in the air. Across both Darkstalkers and her crossover appearances, Shell Kick bounces between being an aerial command normal and an aerial special move input. In the first Darkstalkers, the input was a quarter circle back and kick motion. Shell Pierce is done with down and heavy kick in the air. Attack. This one comes from Vampire Savior, where it was Morrigan's pursuit attack. Keep Shell Kick and Shell Pierce in mind, as they're going to be important a little later on in Marvel 2. Morrigan's first special move is Soul Fist, done with a quarter circle forward and any punch. This is Morrigan's trademark projectile, firing a fireball straight forwards. If done in the air, Morrigan fires it diagonally downwards instead. She's had this since her very first appearance in Darkstalkers, though the Marvel vs. Capcom incarnation is based on the ES or extra special variant of her Soul Fist. ES moves in Darkstalkers are actually considered to be the first instance of what we now know as EX moves in fighting games, another one of Darkstalkers' many innovations in the genre. Another relevant innovation is the Magic Series combo system. This is essentially a universal combo system that allows characters to combo light normals into medium normals into heavy normals. This combo system debuted in Darkstalkers, and Marvel vs. Capcom employs it as well. Almost any time Darkstalkers characters appear in other fighting games, they have this general combo structure, even in games where most of the cast don't have universal access to that. We'll be seeing an example of this a bit later. This Magic Series system would be the inspiration for many similar mechanics, including Capcom's own chain combo system in Street Fighter Alpha 1, and perhaps most notably, Gatling combos in Guilty Gear. Doing a Dragon Punch motion in any punch initiates Shadow Blade, Morrigan's traditional anti-air. Notably, this can also be done in the air, and is a great way to finish air combos for Morrigan. She's had this since the first Darkstalkers game. Vector Drain is a command grab done with a half circle back motion and punch. One of Morrigan's more unique tools, Morrigan transforms her wings into jets the same way she does for her dash and hovers in the air with the opponent for a bit before doing an Azuna drop. She's had this move since the first Darkstalkers, though the animations would be reused for her air throw in Darkstalkers Revenge onwards. Like other command grabs, this move also has a whiff animation. Morrigan's first hyper combo in Marvel 1 is Soul Eraser, done with a quarter circle forward and 2 punches.
Marvelous! Marvelous!
This move is original to Marvel vs. Capcom. Morrigan's bats transform into a large laser cannon that Morrigan fires, complete with a scope. This move not only travels across the screen incredibly quickly, but also covers a decent amount of screen space, thanks to the 2 smaller laser cannons that orbit around the bigger one. This is personally one of my favorite super moves of all time, just for how cool it looks and how over the top it is. Mashing the attack buttons during the move's duration will also add additional damage. Next is Silhouette Blade, done with a Dragon Punch motion in 2 punches. Morrigan summons Lilith, who appears and hits the opponent with a Rising Blade several times. This is largely a powered up version of the ES variation of Lilith's Shining Blade in Vampire Savior. I know I've been vague about who this Lilith person is so far, but trust me, we'll get to her very soon. Next up is Darkness Illusion, done with a quarter circle forward and 2 kicks.
Marvelous! Marvelous!
Morrigan dashes forward a short distance, and if she makes contact with an opponent that isn't blocking, proceeds to do a flashy, damaging auto combo. Morrigan can do this in the air as well, and the animation is actually slightly different there as well. Morrigan's had this since the first Darkstalkers game, though Marvel and Tatsunoko vs. Capcom simplify the input. In Darkstalkers and Capcom vs. SNK, it uses the input most people associate with the Raging Demon. That said, even though people associate the input with Raging Demon, the very first instance of this input was in fact for Morrigan's Darkness Illusion in the first Darkstalkers, predating the first usable instance of Raging Demon in Street Fighter Alpha 1 a year later. This actually gives context to why the input is designed the way it is as well. It's made specifically to complement Darkstalkers' chain combo system. Because Darkstalkers' Magic Series system already allows for chain normals of ascending strength, it makes for a fantastic super to combo into. Morrigan's level 3 is Eternal Slumber.
First attack!
It's original to Marvel vs. Capcom, and this is notably the only game Morrigan has ever had this super in. Makes sense with her being a succubus and all though. The most notable thing about it from a practical standpoint is that the heart projectile used at the start of the super is actually unblockable. This means that with meter and perfect timing, Morrigan has unblockable setups on incoming characters with this move. Here are Morrigan's colors in the arcade version. And here's her exclusive bonus colors in the PS1 port of the game. And here's her ending.
Ready! Fight!
Fitting for the ending itself, Morrigan's ending theme is a remix of her Puzzle Fighter theme. Morrigan also has a secret win pose exclusive to the Japanese release of the game. Hold medium kick after KOing your opponent with Morrigan, and she'll hit a secret win pose with Lilith tied up hanging from the top of the screen, and Morrigan herself in a dominatrix outfit. This was removed from the international releases of the game, though selecting the Japanese ROM in the Fighting Collection still lets you see it. Curiously, this win pose has a random chance of occurring in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, regardless of region. So, that wraps up Morrigan in Marvel vs. Capcom 1, but that's only half the story for this game. Or a third of it, as the case may be. So, remember that third of Morrigan's power that was cast away by Belial? Well, sometime after being sealed off, this power began to form its own consciousness, and began to be drawn to the other missing parts of its soul, manifesting as a strong desire to return to the Makai realm. Just prior to the events of Vampire Savior, Jeddah would come across this power and give it a temporary body, manifesting as the succubus we know today, Lilith. Jeddah's plan was to use her to lure Morrigan and the other Darkstalkers into the Mach again, the realm where the event of Vampire Savior takes place. Lilith, almost childlike in her naivety, goes along with this at first, not quite understanding Jeddah's true intentions, but enjoying her newfound freedom all the same. She'd eventually learn that Jeddah was using her, and that her physical body was on borrowed time. However, she'd finally come across Morrigan, and after Morrigan realizes that Lilith is the manifestation of the power she'd been missing, willingly fuses Lilith into her, finally unlocking her full power. I mentioned way back in Ryu's video how the Street Fighter characters were powered up quite a bit moveset-wise to be on even footing with the Marvel cast. The same is done here with Morrigan, but unlike everyone else, she has a story justification. The Morrigan depicted in Marvel 1 and 2 is post-Vampire Savior, meaning she's fused already with Lilith and obtained her full power. You can see she and Lilith fusing together in her intro animation before a fight. I guess that means she can also infuse with her as well, which makes sense. I imagine Lilith still has her independence after all. I know I usually save character endings for the end of a character overview, but I'm going to lead with it here because it sheds light on the in-universe reason for the way Lilith is implemented in this game. So that gag with Zangief aside, apparently Lilith and Morrigan have a Freaky Friday-esque incident and end up with their body swap, Lilith and Morrigan's body being playable as a secret character here. This would actually be referenced in the PS1 port of Vampire Savior, better known on consoles here as Darkstalkers 3. There, if you hold select on the character select screen while selecting Lilith, you'll instead play as her with Morrigan's color palette, as seen in the previously shown Marvel 1 ending, affectionately dubbed Lilligan by the Darkstalkers fandom. They even go the extra mile in Darkstalkers 3 and use Morrigan's voice clips for her attacks, even though functionally she's still Lilith. In Marvel 1, Lilith uses Morrigan's sprite, but with Lilith's distinctive color scheme instead. While her normals here are for the most part identical to Morrigan's, her special moves and her mobility options deviate a bit. Lilith is kind of a worse Morrigan overall, but she does have some things that distinguish her from her counterpart. Unlike Morrigan, her air dash has no minimum height requirement, making it great for high-low mix-ups. Brilliant Shower is a more reliable projectile super than Solar Racer overall, which she needs because Soul Flash isn't a particularly great standard projectile. She also can't use her Shining Blade uppercut in the air unlike Morrigan, and she has low health as well. To double back to that mobility point, Morrigan typically needs to be at a certain height to initiate a air dash. However, Lilith has no minimum height requirement whatsoever, letting her air dash extremely close to the ground, giving her near instant access to her air normals as a result. To fight Lilith in arcade mode, use all of your assist character stocks in every fight and get 3 hyper combo finishes and 3 variable combo finishes by stage 7. To unlock her in the arcade version, enter the following code below at character select. To unlock her in the Dreamcast version, fulfill the aforementioned requirements to fight her in arcade mode, beat Onslaught afterwards, and save the game to your VMU. In the PlayStation version, simply beat the game once with Morrigan to unlock her. In Marvel vs. Capcom Origins, you can use the aforementioned character select code to play as her, or unlock her permanently for 150 vault points. In the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, simply toggle the secret characters in the EX settings menu before starting the game. Lilith's first special move is Soul Flash, done with a quarter circle forward and any punch. The name is taken from Lilith's projectile in Vampire Savior, a bat with several hearts surrounding it. Here, it uses the heart projectile from Morrigan's Eternal Slumber level 3. Like in Vampire Savior though, Lilith's projectile has shorter range than Morrigan's, dissipating after traveling a bit across the screen, unlike Soulfist, which can go full screen. This makes it a far less effective keep away tool overall. Shining Blade is done with a dragon punch motion in any punch.
Good.
This is Lilith's anti-air uppercut. It's mostly the same as Morrigan's Shadow Blade, but with one major difference. It can't be done in the air, dramatically lowering its already iffy use cases. Lilith also has Vector Drain, done with the same input as Morrigan's version. While Lilith doesn't have Vector Drain in Vampire Savior, she does have a unique command grab there, Mystic Arrow. Her first hyper combo is Brilliant Shower, done with a quarter circle forward in 2 punches.
Fantastic.
If you haven't noticed by now, Lilith's move names are generally light themed, as opposed to Morrigan having more of a dark themed naming scheme for her moves. This one isn't a reskin of Soul Eraser though. It's instead a powered up version of Finishing Shower, a projectile Super Morrigan gets in Vampire Savior. Splendor Love is done with a Dragon Punch motion in 2 punches.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Lilith carries Morrigan in Lilith's body as she's doing a Shining Blade, hitting multiple times. While this is basically a gag version of Morrigan's Silhouette Blade, the move name and even some of its function is taken from Lilith's move of the same name in Vampire Savior. Luminous Illusion is done with a quarter circle forward motion in 2 kicks.
Marvelous.
This is essentially Darkness Illusion renamed to be in line with Lilith's version of the same move in Vampire Savior. It can be done in the air as well. Here are Lilith's colors in the arcade version. And here's her exclusive bonus colors in the PS1 port of the game. Marvel 1 gets additional Darkstalkers representation with a stage, Lifehouse of the Dark Realm. As the stage name suggests, this is a venue in the Makai realm that hosts live music performances. It's looking kind of empty today, but hey, more room for everyone to fight, right? On the left seems to be a very tall set of seemingly broken speakers, as well as an animated guitar. There's also a booth of some kind to the left of that, though the cobwebs make it clear that it hasn't been used for a very long time. To the extreme right is a tall wooden door with a winking neon lit face above it, flashing a toothy grin. Do I even want to know where that door leads? Deeper in the background to the left, you can see a big, somewhat tattered Union Jack hanging from the ceiling. This little detail makes sense when you take a look at who's performing here, Lord Raptor. Raptor, or Zabo in Japan, is a character that's been in Darkstalkers from the start, having originally been an Australian rock star with an obsession with death and destruction. His final live performance as a human was a front for a mass blood sacrifice that would kill everyone involved, including himself. This caught the attention of Ozam, a higher up in the Makai hierarchy, who resurrected Raptor as a zombie to more or less serve as his enforcer. While Raptor is probably best known for his unrequited crush on Senko and being an unbearable top tier in Vampire Savior, he's also responsible for one of the most important innovations in fighting game history. Raptor in Darkstalkers 1 is the first fighting game character with an air dash. When you consider that there's an entire subgenre of fighting games out there defined by their universal air dash mechanics, and those fighters themselves have a design through line that can be traced back to Darkstalkers, it really underlines just how important of a series Darkstalkers is, not just aesthetically, but mechanically. Watching him shred his guitar are 2 skeletons that somehow have mohawks, literally headbanging on the edge of the stage. Behind them is a broken table, and to the left is another still intact table, with 2 chattering skulls on it. Behind Raptor seems to be a gate of some sort, probably leading backstage. There's a fog and light setup as well, which fits with a performance like this. Raptor really seems to be going in on that guitar though. You think he has a SoundCloud? One neat little detail shows up when you win a match here. Several pale green spirits will fly in and surround the winning character. These are known in Japanese folklore as Hitodama, and generally represent souls that have departed from their bodies. There's one last Darkstalkers thing in Marvel 1 to talk about. but she'll be getting her own video in the future, so look out for that down the line. Morrigan predictably returns in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but this time she's joined by several of her fellow Darkstalkers cast members. Morrigan doesn't change too dramatically from Marvel 1, and yet she fares a bit better in the sequel in some subtle but positive ways. She has one of the fastest snapbacks in the game. She has a semi-practical infinite that can be done mid-screen. Her mobility is still great. And she benefits from unfly a bit despite not having a flight state. I'll explain that in a bit. Her health still sucks though. The aforementioned infinite only works on people at a certain size threshold, and her overall damage still leaves a lot to be desired. The switch to a 4-button scheme for attacks surprisingly doesn't mess with Morrigan too much, though she did see 2 small moveset changes. Because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 now has an optional universal launcher in addition to each character's standard launcher options, Morrigan's Negro Desire was changed to Down Back and Heavy Punch. Most notably, Shell Kick goes back to being an aerial quarter circle back in kick motion. Speaking of, Morrigan has an infinite that works both mid-screen and in the corner, involving both Shell Kick and Shell Pierce. After launching the opponent, quickly do Jumping Light Kick, Shell Pierce, and then Shell Kick. As you land, immediately micro walk forward a bit to cross under the opponent and snipe them with Light Punch into a crouching Heavy Punch launcher, and repeat the process. The catch is that this only works on characters of a certain size profile. Dr. Doom, Storm, Tron, Colossus, Venom, Bison, Silver Samurai, Anakaris, Zangief, Sabretooth, Ruby Heart, and Amingo. The bigger characters drop out of this after 1 or 2 reps, though you can do 1 rep to get some other nasty setup started instead. Sentinel isn't so lucky, however. Though the aforementioned infinite doesn't work on him, there's an even easier infinite that works on Sentinel and Sentinel only. Jump and do Light Punch, Light Kick, Medium Punch, Medium Kick, and Heavy Punch. The Heavy Punch hitting as Morrigan is descending from the jump. That puts Sentinel in just enough hit stun for you to be able to repeat the sequence until Undizzy kicks in. While we're on the subject of Sentinel, back in that video, we talked about the mechanics of Unfly, a glitch state in the earlier Marvel fighters that allows flight characters to do actions after deactivating flight that they wouldn't be able to normally. Sentinel is easily the most well-known character to benefit from Unfly, but perhaps lesser known is Morrigan's ability to take advantage of Unfly. In fact, she's the only character in the game without flight to be able to use Unfly. Now, I know what you're thinking. But 7th, if she doesn't have a flight mode, how can she use Unfly? Well, despite Morrigan not having actual flight, yet anyway, the answer lies in her Shell Pierce move. Normally, after using Shell Pierce, Morrigan is in a fall state. After bouncing off the enemy with Shell Pierce, her actions are limited. She can't block or attack, but she can cancel into her air dash. She notably can't attack out of said air dash in this instance though. But when Morrigan takes a hit that activates Unfly mode for other characters like Doom's Plasma Beam or Magneto's Disruptor, this changes. After Shell Pierce, Morrigan is free to block and most notably cancel into an air dash that can be cancelled into her air normals. This bolsters her ability to chase down opponents after a Shell Pierce for fun high-low mix-up shenanigans, especially when paired with something strong like Tron's Projectile Assist. Just keep in mind that Unfly ends if you do an attack that sends the character flying far enough that the screen scrolls to catch up with them, or if you normal jump. Normally, if you do an aerial attack that has some kind of recoil like Foot Dive, Unfly ends as well. For whatever reason though, this doesn't apply to Shell Pierce, which is what helps make Unfly possible for Morrigan. Morrigan's first assist is Shadow Blade. Her second assist is Soul Fist.
Do your job.
Her third assist is also Soul Fist, though she now has Silhouette Blade as her team hyper combo instead of Solar Racer. Here are Morrigan's colors. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the first game in the series with a universal launcher, done with down forward in either heavy punch or heavy kick, depending on the character. These can only be done raw and can't be comboed into, however. Generally, each character's universal launcher shares near, if not completely identical animation and frame data to their standard launchers. That said, which of the following Marvel vs. Capcom 2 characters has a unique universal launcher animation? Is it 1. Spider-Man, 2. Ruby Heart, 3. Sansan, or 4. Trombone? If your answer was 3, you should probably brush up on your Marvel a bit, because the answer is 2. Ruby Heart. Including the universal launcher, Ruby Heart has 3 launchers overall. First is her crouching heavy punch, using her anchor. Second is standing heavy kick, a high kick that only launches airborne opponents. And last is the universal launcher, which has a unique kicking animation not seen anywhere else in her moveset specifically for this maneuver. Morrigan also shows up in Capcom vs. SNK, released the same year as Marvel 2. Despite also being a 4-button game, CVS1's control scheme is designed more like an SNK game, where characters have special moves and a wealth of command normals instead of medium buttons. This in turn affects a lot of Morrigan's legacy inputs. She also keeps her vampire chain combos, which is notable, since Capcom vs. SNK doesn't use magic series like Marvel and Tatsunoko vs. Capcom does. Morrigan's a slightly different beast in Capcom vs. SNK compared to Marvel, but still an interesting character nonetheless. She retains her magic series chains from Darkstalkers. Darkness illusions more damaging here than in Marvel thanks to being a level 3, as well as going full screen in CVS1 Pro specifically. Her mobility's been nerfed hard regardless of what groove she's in though. She's still meter hungry, and yes, this is going to be a running theme. Some things still haven't changed from Vampire Savior, I suppose. She also lacks a projectile super of any sort now. Morrigan is actually a secret character in the first release of Capcom vs. SNK 1, one of 4 alongside Evil Ryu, Orochi Iori, and the game's most infamous character by far, Nakaruru. To unlock her in Dreamcast, you have to first unlock every EX variant of every base roster character in the game. Doing so allows you to purchase the ability to fight her in the game's secret shop. Afterwards, fight her in arcade mode by getting 60 groove points and having 4 super combo finishes while playing in Capcom Groove. Do so, and you'll be challenged by a ratio 4 Morrigan. Beat her and she'll show up in the shop to purchase for 8,000 points. Capcom vs. SNK Pro, however, unlocks everyone from the start, so if you're playing this in the Fighting Collection, she's already available. Splash Libido, normally her standing heavy punch in just about every game she's ever been in, is now a command normal done with forward and heavy punch. Deep Crescendo, her legacy heavy kick, is similarly now done with forward and heavy kick instead. Morrigan also has her 2 proximity normals from Darkstalkers now made into proximity command normals. First is Ecstasy Crime, done with forward and heavy punch close to the opponent. So, the thing about this specific proximity command normal is that because it's initiated with forward and a heavy button, you run the risk of getting a forward throw instead, whose input overlaps. You can use a light normal to combo into it to avoid this though. Okay, so here's where things get tricky. For whatever reason, despite Morrigan's move names being otherwise consistent in every other Capcom Fighting Collection, for some reason CVS1 has the move name swapped for 2 of her moves. Her forward and heavy kick proximity command normal is called Necro Desire here, when it's called Mysterious Arc everywhere else. For the sake of staying consistent with what's officially named in the collections, I'll go with Necro Desire here, but keep in mind that this was likely an error. With that in mind, down forward and heavy punch is what they call Mysterious Arc in CVS1, for whatever reason. Down forward and heavy kick is Twilight Loop. This is typically her sweep in Darkstalkers. Shell kick is back to being an aerial command normal, being done with down and light kick. Be aware that shell kick actually shifts Morrigan backwards a fair bit when using it here. Quarter circle forward and punch is Soul Fist. This reverts to the smaller, non-ES version as seen in Darkstalkers, though it does have a new sprite here, which is neat. Shadow Blade is about the same as well, being done with a Dragon Punch motion and punch. Again, this reverts from the ES version as seen in the previous Versus games, and can also only be done on the ground now, as in Darkstalkers. Vector Drain is also still done with a half circle back and punch. Morrigan's first super is notably one she doesn't get in any Marvel Vs. game, Valkyrie Turn, done with a half circle back and kick. This is an interesting super. Morrigan zooms off screen and then flies back in, doing a multi-hit shell kick at an angle on the way back. If you hold up or down after the input, she'll fly back on screen either higher or lower than the standard trajectory. Even more notable is that to initiate the additional shell kick, you have to press kick while she's flying back in. Otherwise, she won't attack, but she'll be invincible until she lands unless she hits kick. Next up is Cardinal Blade, done with a quarter circle forward and then a down forward motion and punch. This is essentially her ES Shadow Blade from Darkstalkers. Morrigan retains Darkness Illusion, though now it's a level 3 super, done with its classic Darkstalkers input. As opposed to vanilla CVS1 where it only traveled a certain distance, Darkness Illusion now goes just about full screen in CVS1 Pro. Here's Morrigan's colors. All of her colors in this game are taken from her alternate colors in Vampire Savior. Morrigan is one of a handful of characters in the game that have a stage dedicated to her specifically, Aensland Castle. In vanilla CVS1, like with Morrigan herself, this stage can be bought after encountering her in arcade mode. This seems to take place in what looks like the foyer of Aensland Castle, with some large windows draping the background wall. It cycles between day and night outside at a rather fast clip, sunlight streaking through occasionally. This also seems to affect the plants as well, either getting additional flowers or losing them altogether depending on the shift in time. There's an ornate clock to the far left, adorned with a bat symbol near the top and a moon-shaped pendulum. A moon symbol would go on to form the basis of the logo for the Japan-only Vampire Darkstalkers collection on PS2. To the left of that seems to be two mannequins with two of Morrigan's own outfits on them. The first seems to be a fairly regal green dress. Since Morrigan comes from Akai nobility, I guess that makes sense. It won't be the first time we see one of these either. The second outfit is more interesting. It's the very same outfit Morrigan can change into in her victory poses in both Darkstalkers and the previous Versus games, a white blouse with black pants. There's also a statue and a bust in the background with Corinthian-styled helmets. Above the fight are a pair of ornate chandeliers which glisten as the fight goes on. There's also a large mirror to the far right as well. There's no reflections of the fighters in the mirror whatsoever though. There is a reflection of the stage background itself though, and if you look closely, the reflection is a bit more dilapidated, with tattered drapery, cobwebs, and even the pillars looking close to crumbling. This won't be the only stage we'll see with some mirror trickery though. The standout part of this stage is its theme music, titled Theme of Morrigan, Deserted Chateau. What makes it a standout is the fact that this is neither a remix of Deserted Chateau or a remix of any of Morrigan's themes. It's a remix of Dimitri's stage theme from Darkstalker's Revenge. An admittedly decent, if low-key remix, but a remix of his theme all the same. Interesting naming decision there, I'd say. That about does it for this stage. It's relatively bare compared to some of the stuff going on in the game's other stages, but I'm glad it's here. Sit tight though, as this isn't the last we'll be seeing of Aensland Castle. Morrigan's back in CVS 2, still with the same sprite, but against all odds, Morrigan fares quite a bit better this time around. Depending on the groove anyway. Morrigan gets some tweaks going into CVS 2, especially in the mobility department, and they end up helping more than hindering. Though it's groove dependent, her mobility as a whole is better than in CVS 1, especially in K and N groove. Specifically, her dash in those grooves allow for some pretty messed up Oki. Darkness Illusion hurts and can be comboed into, but her damage overall is pretty low, and she's majorly dependent on cashing out on Darkness Illusion. She also can't take too many hits either, as always. And honestly, Capcom grooves honestly don't help her out at all. First and foremost, Morrigan's mobility is entirely dependent on which groove she's in. If she's in a Capcom groove, she gets a standard little dash, but if you play her in an SNK groove, she gets her trademark cover dash. This mobility option is key to Morrigan's mix-up game, as it gives her some scary Oki once you've knocked an opponent down, since you can make your next move fairly ambiguous with her dash. And even getting her offense started is easier with hover dash light normals. While SNK grooves in general work best for her, K groove specifically is generally considered to be her best groove. Just Defend works great in conjunction with poking using her decently ranged normals, and more importantly, Darkness Illusion does insane damage with the rage buff K groove gets with the full meter. With the jump back to Capcom's traditional 6-button layout, Morrigan's wealth of command normals from CVS 1 go back to being proximity normals as they were in Darkstalkers, as well as retaining her vampire combo chains. She does get one minor adjustment though. Shell Kick is now done with down and heavy kick instead of light kick as in CVS 1. Morrigan also has a new super, Soul Phoenix, done with a double quarter circle forward motion and bunch. This is basically Morrigan's equivalent to Shinku Hadoken. Curiously, the supers only ever appeared in this game and nowhere else. She can also do this in the air. Here are Morrigan's colors. Morrigan's light kick color seems inspired by, of all things, her exclusive bonus color in the PS1 board of Marvel vs. Capcom 1. With the Versus series ending its initial hiatus in 2008 with Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Morrigan resumed her tenure in crossover fighters as well, and notably sporting a 3D model in a fighting game for the first time, finally laying her CPS2 sprite to rest. Gotta say, even considering the limitations of the Wii hardware this game runs on, she still looks pretty great. Tatsunoko Morrigan is interesting, as she's kind of a mix of both her Marvel vs. Capcom and Capcom vs. SNK incarnations in some respects. Soul Fist is a huge projectile. She has some of the safest supers and block strings in the game. She's up there with Ryu as having one of the best assists in the game for its general utility. And she has some pretty fast movement overall. That said, her mobility is closer to Darkstalkers and that her dash puts her in an aerial state. Not really a con per se, but it's an adjustment for anyone more used to playing her in the Versus games compared to her home series. And for as safe as her supers are, you'll really only be using her level 3 on a consistent basis. Morrigan's theme in Cross Generation of Heroes is a remix of the Scotland stage theme from Darkstalkers Revenge, which has more or less become the song most associated with her from Darkstalkers. While the original song was a good mix of synth and piano, the piano takes center stage with this arrangement, giving this theme a bit of a classy feel to it, akin to a Marvel vs. Capcom 1 theme. This is by far my favorite rendition of this song in particular. Morrigan in Tatsunoko doesn't quite play like she did in Marvel 1 and 2 beyond surface level stuff, playing a bit closer to how she does in Darkstalkers, with some of her old normals becoming command normals, akin to her Capcom vs. SNK incarnation. Splash Libido is back to being a command normal, done with forward and medium attack. She retains her Twilight Loop sweep, done with down and heavy attack. Deep Crescendo is her next command normal, done with forward and heavy attack. This one is jump cancelable and also functions as a secondary launcher for Morrigan, though it doesn't launch as high as the game's universal launcher. Soul Fist is done with the quarter circle forward and any attack button. Soul Fist goes back to the larger version from Marvel vs. Capcom, sporting a larger projectile than usual and a variable travel speed depending on the strength of the attack button. She can also have multiple fireballs on screen at once, so these are a little more viable as a zoning tool as a result now. Could you imagine if they were even better in those regards? Shadow Blade is done with its usual Dragon Punch motion. This has also gone back to the multi-hit ES-inspired version from Marvel vs. Capcom. Like Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2, this can be done in the air once again. Shell Kick is back to being a special move once again, being done with the quarter circle back and heavy attack in the air. Vector Drain is still present as well, done with its usual half circle back motion and attack. Morrigan's first hyper combo is Finishing Shower, done with a quarter circle forward and 2 attack buttons.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Appearing for the first time in the Versus game since Lilith's version of the move in Marvel 1, it's a little different here in Tatsunoko. Here, it retains the original Vampire Savior version's long startup, though it does leave Morrigan pretty safe on both hit and on block. Because of that long startup though, you'll rarely be using this outside of DHCs or very specific chip damage setups. It can also be done in the air. Half circle back and 2 attacks has Morrigan initiate Valkyrie turn.
Very good.
Similar to both Darkstalkers and Capcom vs. SNK, holding either up or down after the initial motion will have Morrigan fly in the frame higher or lower respectively. Also, like its previous incarnations, Morrigan is completely invulnerable unless you press a button to initiate the shell kick during her flight. Again, not useful for combos, but a good get out of jail free card in certain instances thanks to the invincibility. Like in Capcom vs. SNK, Darkness Illusion retains its status as Morrigan's level 3, being done with the reverse Dragon Punch motion and 2 attacks.
Fantastic. Monster.
On top of the incredible damage and being Morrigan's most useful super by far, Lilith also makes a cameo during this super, which is pretty cool. Morrigan's assist is Soul Fist.
Assist okay.
Though it's just a simple fireball, this makes it one of the best general purpose assists in the game, usable for things like combo extensions and even helping establish screen control. Here are Morrigan's colors. Morrigan's color 2 resembles her traditional player 2 color in most of her fighting game appearances, though everywhere that's usually black is colored red, so it more closely resembles color 6 in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Color 3 is of course based on Lilith. Color 4 is based on another long-standing color she's had in Darkstalkers, though it originally debuted as her light kit color in Darkstalkers Revenge. And here are our endings in Cross Generation of Heroes and Ultimate All-Stars.
Oh! また負けてしまいました。
私の勝ちね。さあ、次の相手は誰かしら？
では、再度私めが。
相手は誰でもいいわよ。かかってきなさい。
One brief note. The kid that beats Morrigan at the game in her ending is actually Manabu, a minor character associated with Saki and Quiz the Nairo Dreams. Pretty cool pull, all things considered. Darkstalkers joined Street Fighter as the only Capcom series to have a stage in Marvel vs. Capcom, Capcom vs. SNK, and now Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, featuring another, more stylized take on Aensland Castle. Before I even get to the stage itself, I've got to point out how amazingly Castlevania coded the song for this stage is. Fitting for a Morrigan-themed stage, there's some distinctive synth and piano, but what really pushes it higher is that organ. I'd actually go so far as to say that this is one of the best stage themes in any Versus game. It really gives this stage a sense of place in a way that feels noticeably stronger than a lot of other past and future stages. In the center of the stage is a demonic-looking door that a flock of bats will periodically fly out of. Fitting for being Morrigan's abode and all. To the far left of the stage are some caskets lying on the ground. Morrigan, to my knowledge, hasn't been seen sleeping in these anywhere in Darkstalkers though. Her endings in the first two games does show her sleeping on the bed of roses though. On both sides of the stage are statues holding scythes. It does a really good job of framing the center of the stage appropriately, honestly. Like in her Capcom vs. SNK stage, there's a bunch of mannequins littered around the stage, each with different kinds of gowns on them. It's a little hard to make out during a fight due to the Wii's low texture resolution, but there's one to the far right of the stage, as well as two sets on each side of the stairs in the center of the stage. There's 4 indents on the back wall, 2 on each side of the center doors in the background that also have mannequins with gowns on them as well. My personal favorite part of this stage are the large mirrors hanging above the action. During the fight, they actually reflect the action going on, showcasing your character's actions in the center mirror while showing heavily distorted views of the action on the side mirrors. Sometimes, it'll actually shift to show the characters in the reverse of the positions they're actually in on stage. The mirror structure itself also fittingly has a pair of bat wings on the top of them, again fitting for a stage revolving around Morrigan. There's 2 large windows on both sides of the stage, showing a dark and stormy night outside, with thunder roaring as well, though it might be tricky to hear over the music. Though you'll only ever see it if you're doing a variable error rate, this stage actually has a skylight as well. This room, which I'm assuming is either a part of or leads to Morrigan's personal chambers, seems to be at the top of Aensland Castle, and if you look out the windows, you can see a somewhat rocky region surrounding the castle. This is actually pretty consistent with how Aensland Castle has been depicted in previous games, namely the entire Darkstalkers series and Pocket Fighter. This is one of the last times we'd get an original Darkstalkers stage in any fighting game, so I'm glad to see they knocked it out of the park here. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is arguably Morrigan's most infamous fighting game appearance from a competitive standpoint, being better in this game than she's been in literally any other fighting game, let alone Darkstalkers. We'll get into why in a bit. Morrigan, first and foremost, has a new voice actor in both English and Japanese. Her new English voice actor is Siobhan Flynn, who more or less became Morrigan's de facto English voice actor from this point on, returning in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite as well as Tekken. She's had roles in TV shows like the original Charmed and Tales of the Crypt, and some other video game and anime roles in Hellsing and The Last Remnant, to name a few. She notably plays Morrigan with a Scottish accent here, though Flynn herself is Welsh, a sticking point I've seen some people mention impacts the performance a bit. I am absolutely not the person to ask if you want to know if it's a good accent, but it personally doesn't bother me. Morrigan's new Japanese voice actor is Tatsunoko, who has had one hell of a career so far in the field. She's another voice actor we'd be here talking about all day if we were to go down the list of all of her roles, but they include Lacus Clyde in Gundam Seed, Shino in Mononoke, beautiful series, highly recommended, Neptune in the Hyper Dimension Neptunia series, and Mitsuru in Persona 3 and its associated spin-offs, on top of roles in other games like Genshin Impact. Morrigan's theme in Marvel 3 is yet again a remix of her Darkstalkers Revenge theme, though there's a more pronounced emphasis on brass in this arrangement compared to Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. I'll be honest, I used to actually hate this remix, but over the years it's kind of grown on me. It's still my personal least favorite of the renditions of this theme we'll be talking about in this video, but I do think it's an objectively good remix at the least. Oh boy. This is the game that made Morrigan a force to be reckoned with. You either shut her down before she pops her install, or you try your luck navigating the bullet hell. Unlike most other games where Morrigan has a rushdown focus, she's Marvel 3's zoning queen. Remember how Morrigan's hurting for meter in pretty much every other game she's been in? Yeah, not a problem in this game between her Soul Drain Fireball and the Dark Harmonizer assist. She has some pretty wild frame data on her normals, allowing for conversions off of interactions most other characters probably wouldn't be able to capitalize on. Astral Vision's high potential to snowball into pure projectile hell will probably make your opponent want to play another game entirely. On top of her new flight mode, which enables her repressive zoning in Marvel 3, her general mobility is as good as it ever was. But you are absolutely going to have to put the work in on your execution, because Morrigan's game plan hinges on those fly and unfly cancelled fireballs. At first glance, Morrigan seems pretty similar to a Tatsunoko vs. Capcom incarnation, retaining her two command normals from there and mostly getting new stuff, though she does lose Valkyrie turn this go around. Splash Libido is similarly to TVC, done with forward and medium attack. Deep Crescendo is done with forward and heavy attack, also similarly to Tatsunoko vs. Capcom.
Yes, air combo.
Soul Fist is done with a quarter circle forward and any attack button. Soul Fist has generally been a pretty good fireball more often than not in these games so far, but this is arguably the move in its final form. Morrigan can notably angle the move upwards with the heavy version now. In the air, the heavy version also fires a Soul Fist straight ahead instead of the diagonally downwards angle they usually travel in. This is going to be very, very important for Morrigan. She also has a special Soul Fist variation, Soul Drain, done with the quarter circle forward and the special button. This is a much slower traveling fireball, but if it hits the opponent, Morrigan drains a meter from them, gaining a decent chunk in return. This is an important tool for Morrigan for quite a few reasons. It obviously helps build meter for her to get her full screen fireball lockdown started, but it's also a handy piece of anti-Phoenix tech if used properly, since you can use it in combos to deprive Phoenix of meter at the last moment. Shadow Blade is done with a Dragon Punch motion and attack.
Yes, Cool. Air combo.
Blade.
This functions pretty similarly to the TVC version. Vector Drain is, as always, done with a half circle back and attack. Morrigan can notably follow up a successful Vector Drain with an OTG Shadow Servant super, though that's mostly all she gets from it damage-wise. Morrigan now gets a flight state done with a quarter circle back and the special button. This is arguably the single most game-changing flight state in the game for a multitude of reasons, all of which benefit Morrigan. First off, Morrigan can not only cancel her normals in the flight like most flight characters in the game, she can cancel most of her special moves in the flight too. She can cancel out of them with flight too, and this is also important. For example, if she whiffs Vector Drain, she can cancel the otherwise lengthy recovery animation into flight, quickly unfly to reset her to neutral, and she's safer even faster than she would have been if she had let the whiff animation rock. Its most well-known utility by far, however, is allowing Morrigan to cancel the recovery of her Soul Fists, allowing her to fire them far faster and more efficiently than she'd normally be able to. Because her aerial heavy fireball can be fired straight forwards, she can effectively create a lockdown pattern that can make life hell for any characters without good mobility tools to navigate it. It gets crazier, but we'll get to that in a sec. Morrigan's first hyper combo is Finishing Shower, done with a quarter circle forward and 2 attack buttons.
Dodge this.
Wonderful.
This move's been massively buffed from Tatsunoko vs Capcom in that its startup has been tremendously reduced, giving it actual utility as a combo ender now, especially in the air after a Shadow Blade. Like in Tatsunoko, you can hold either up or down to direct the missiles, and it works great as both a DHC and a Team Hyper combo. Shadow Servant is done with a Dragon Punch motion and 2 attacks.
You can't escape.
Maximum.
This is notably Morrigan's only OTG super, and as such, the only way to get any solo damage off of a hard knockdown with her. This super is best used mid-screen as it does very little damage in the corner. Morrigan's level 3 is, as always, Darkness Illusion, done with a quarter circle back and 2 attacks.
Does it feel?
Excellent.
How
Air combo.
You've been ignored.
Maximum.
How's that feel?
Stylish.
The Marvel 3 version notably travels pretty far across the screen and is best used to secure a kill when you absolutely need to delete a character. If you need extra insurance and have the meter, Morrigan also has a small window after the hard knockdown the move ends with to tack on the Shadow Servant for additional damage. Morrigan's scariest super in this game isn't her level 3 though. In fact, it doesn't actually even do damage on its own. Pressing down, and 2 attack buttons initiates Morrigan's install super, Astral Vision. A duplicate of Morrigan will spawn on the opposite side of the opponent. Even if the opponent is taking up corner space, the clone will still be behind them off screen. This clone mirrors Morrigan's actions while Astral Vision is active, effectively doubling her damage output. Morrigan first got this as an install super in Darkstalker's Revenge. It's when Astral Vision is combined with fly and unfly cancelled fireballs that Morrigan's game plan reaches its final form. It creates a fireball array that's nigh impossible to navigate without taking a good chunk of chip or regular damage. It should be noted though that there is a notable gap in this pattern. The air above the fireball pattern is essentially the only safe angle to approach Morrigan from. But that's where the last piece of the puzzle for this game plan fits in.
Crossover. Cool.
Morrigan and Dr. Doom, generally referred to as Morridoom by players, is easily the most infamous shell in the history of competitive Marvel vs. Capcom 3. That gap I mentioned before that could potentially work as a way to approach Morrigan, it's pretty much invalidated by Dr. Doom's hidden missiles assist, which happens to safely cover the exact space that would otherwise serve as an approach vector. On top of that, hidden missiles, even isolated from Morrigan, is arguably the best assist in the game on its own merits, locking down the opponent, facilitating combo extensions, you name it. Thanks to that, it strengthens Morrigan's already oppressive Astral Vision zoning, but also allows Morrigan, who by the way can also very effectively rush you down, to get in and open the opponent up with a bunch of high-low mix-ups. In addition, Doom's general point game plan complements Morrigan well. You generally want to stall with aerial photon shots and play a runaway game to build meter, which becomes even more effective with Morrigan's own meter build assist. More on that in a sec. Once you manage to score a hard knockdown with Doom, something he doesn't struggle much with thanks to how easy it is to clip someone with something like Foot Dive, he can DHC into Astral Vision and let Morrigan get the party started from there. The funny thing about Morridoom is that it wasn't quite obvious how overbearing the show was early on in the game's lifespan. Early on in Ultimate's meta, player Dominion ran a Beautiful Joe, Doctor Strange, and Morrigan team for a team comp that provided incredible screen control. While he largely played Morrigan in anchor position here, the beginnings of the defensive playstyle Morrigan would come to be known for in competitive Marvel began to take shape here amid the game's early rushdown-centric meta. That said, it was another East Coast player Dominion would frequently play against, Chris G, that would innovate on the character's zoning capabilities by adding Doom into the mix. Virgil too, but he's more artillery here. Because Doom so thoroughly covers most of the weaknesses in Morrigan's game plan, on top of providing her safe ways to enable it, when played optimally, as Chris G would come to do, this shell was borderline impossible to crack. The way Chris G would dominate most tournaments with this team in the early to mid 2010s especially, would even make people call into question the validity of Marvel 3 as a spectator game, despite it having been a fan favorite up to that point. Because a good Morridoom slows down the pace of the game to a crawl, as the player on the other end has to either navigate correctly or die slowly, many spectators and even players would come to malign the playstyle. My opinion doesn't really count for much considering I'm not super great at this game, but personally, I've always found it incredibly fascinating that such a defensive playstyle is not only viable in a historically rushdown-centric series like Marvel, but arguably as good as the most optimal rushdown team comps like Zero May Cry. To me at least, it feels like the logical conclusion of the style of zoning you saw in Marvel 2 from characters like Spyro and Cable. Chris G particularly would go on to win EVO 2016 with his Morrigan team after coming just shy the years prior. The following year, he'd get second place, losing to Ryan LV, who ran a Morrigan team of his own. We'll unpack that team in the eventual Chun-Li video. Morrigan's first assist is Shadow Blade.
See ya again.
Crossover attack.
See ya again.
Her second assist is Soul Fist.
Crossover assist.
See ya again.
Hope you didn't think we were done talking about all of the stuff that makes Morrigan wild in this game. Her third assist is her most infamous, Dark Harmonizer.
See ya again.
Crossover
See
assist.
ya again.
Of the handful of special meter build assists in the game, Dark Harmonizer is easily the most practical one for the simple fact that it's notoriously difficult to punish. Because Morrigan is on screen for so little time, your opponent has only a pretty small window to snipe her. Because of the smaller risk associated with calling this specific assist, Morrigan, on top of being a godlike point zoner, also functions incredibly well as a team battery. Here are Morrigan's colors. Color 2 is the standard blonde player 2 variant she's had in most games. Color 3 is an original color meant to evoke a rose. Every rose has its thorns and all that, I suppose. Color 4 is a pink alternate meant to fit with the vast number of pink alternate colors in Marvel 2 and Marvel 3. Color 5 originates in Vampire Savior, being selected there by pressing all 3 kick buttons. Color 6 is once again Lilith. Morrigan's alternate costume is a simple casual outfit. While Morrigan has had a similar outfit in her previous victory poses in the older Darkstalkers and Versus games, this specific version actually comes from the Darkstalkers OVA. It also appeared in the SNK and Capcom Card Fighters game on DS as well. Here are all of Morrigan's character interactions.
Allow me to help release your hate.
Learn now why they call me the master of magnetism.
Go for broke.
You need to learn to think happy thoughts. You need to strip off those prosaic morals.
You sure you're not with the Hellfire Club?
Go for broke.
Show me your true form. Let it out. Don't be so stiff. Let's have some fun.
I won't lose, not to the likes of you.
It's do or die.
You're so serious. It's kinda cute. just the cutest.
Already identified 17 ways to beat you.
It's do or die.
Children should be sleeping at this hour.
And here are her endings. Morrigan predictably returns in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, being one of the earliest characters announced for the game. Morrigan's back in Infinite, and before you ask, no, her zoning isn't as good as it was in Marvel 3. She gets a new move that helps with gaining meter. She gets staircase combos thanks to her flight mode. But she no longer has the ability to flight cancel her special moves, so yeah, party's over, y'all. Soul Fist is still a good projectile though, particularly with Time Stone. But she's also significantly affected by Infinite's buff to push blocking, and how it now reflects projectiles. And even with Harmonious Spear, building meter with Morrigan is a lot harder and involves much more risk than with other characters. Morrigan's theme is, you guessed it, another Scotland stage remix. Honestly, I might be alone on this, but this is my favorite character theme in the game and my personal favorite arrangement in the game overall. I even like it more than the Marvel 3 version. While she and Jeddah both have dance-oriented remix of their themes in Infinite, a dance track suits Morrigan way more than it does Jeddah, and this is coming from someone that doesn't even hate Jeddah's theme. This is literally the only song from this game I ever listened to in isolation outside of the game itself, and I don't really care if I'm alone on that. It's great. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Morrigan's zoning capabilities this time around. On top of Morrigan losing her fly cancels, Infinite has a few system changes from 3 that affects everyone, but seem almost designed specifically with Morrigan in mind. The most obvious and debilitating is push blocking getting a massive buff. When using Advanced Guard on a projectile that doesn't have the piercing property, if you time it correctly, the push block will actually reflect projectiles back at the sender. The initial character can push block the projectile back or nullify it with their own as well, but the damage is already done. This pretty much makes it incredibly difficult to establish any kind of major zoning offense with Soul Fist. Morrigan's first command normal is Heart Piercing, done with forward and light punch. This was her standing medium in past games.
Good. Good.
For whatever reason, Necro Desire and Mysterious Arc have their names swapped once again. Necro Desire is done with forward and light kick.
Yes!
Beautiful, aren't I?
Yes! Yes!
And the Mystery Arc is done with down forward and heavy punch.
Take this!
Shell kick is done with a down and heavy kick motion in the air.
Shell kick!
Yes!
Soul Fist is done with a quarter circle forward and either punch button.
Soul fist! Soul fist!
Morrigan retains the angle she could fire them at from Marvel 3, light going straight ahead and heavy going diagonally upwards. This can be done in the air and the angles are swapped there. Morrigan can rapid fire these during Time Storm, but it just isn't the same.
Soul fist! Soul fist! Soul fist! Soul fist!
Yes!
Shadow Blade is now done with a down-down and punch motion. This can still be done in the air as well.
Great!
Vector Drain is as always a half circle back motion and punch.
How does that feel? How does that feel?
She can't use Shadow Servant as an OTG follow-up after this anymore, unfortunately. Harmonious Spear is an entirely new move, done with a quarter circle forward and kick.
I'll drain you! I'll drain you!
Morrigan sends out a small cloud projectile. The longer you hold kick, the farther out it goes. Once you let go of kick, a bladed projectile pops out of the cloud. If it hits the opponent, a dark cloud will hang around their head for a short time, and if hit by Soul Fist during this time, Morrigan will get additional meter upon successful hits. It more or less replaces Soul Drain. Quarter circle back and 2 kicks initiates flight for Morrigan. She can't use this to cancel her special moves anymore, so a lot of its offensive utility is gone now. She does, however, have staircase combos she can do in flight mode, so it's good for something at the least. Finishing Shower is done with a quarter circle forward and 2 punches.
Can you dodge this?
Unlike the previous games, Morrigan can no longer influence what direction the missiles fire in. It's a good lockdown super to active switch out for mix-ups though. Shadow Servant is done with down, down, and 2 punches.
Maximum!
Beg your pardon! You can't escape!
Maximum!
Astral Vision is done with down, down, and 2 kicks. How the mighty have fallen. Astral Vision wasn't directly nerfed itself, but everything that facilitated Morrigan's shenanigans in 3 was, so it's not nearly as useful anymore. Darkness Illusion is again Morrigan's level 3, done with a quarter circle back and 2 punches.
Did that feel good?
Here are Morrigan's colors. Color 2 is her usual 2-player color. Color 3 is again Lilith. And color 4 is her 3 kicks color from Vampire Savior, though notably far more tan now. Morrigan's alternate costume is a slightly redesigned take on one of her casual outfits in her old Darkstalker's wind poses. Here are Morrigan's character interactions.
Morrigan!
Your eyes burn with passion.
Morrigan!
Forget salvation. What about pleasure? You never learn, so I'll give you your punishment.
You are like a delicate rose blossoming moments before a storm.
Known each other for centuries. We'll perform perfectly together.
No need to go easy on me. Come on!
Let's forget about vengeance and burn ourselves with passion.
Learn why I'm called the Spirit of Vengeance.
Don't get any funny ideas, partner.
Repugnant vermin, suffer the ultimate agony.
You have no soul. How tedious.
Fools, our will is law. We will destroy you.
Machines just aren't my thing.
Do you think you can defeat us?
Morrigan is likely fated to be one of those characters that'll have to live on exclusively through crossover appearances instead of her own series, since Darkstalkers is probably never coming back. That said, I think pretty much everyone would rather have her around than not, as she's become a fixture in not just the Versus games, but general Capcom crossovers as well. If there's 3 characters you can almost count on being in a Capcom-involved crossover fighter, it's Ryu, Chun-Li, and Morrigan. That said, with the Versus series seemingly on ice as well, it might be a while before we see Morrigan again. Thankfully, the vast majority of her fighting game appearances are playable on modern platforms today, so if you always wanted to give her a spin, you have more than a few games to do so in. All that said, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks for watching, and a special thanks to the patrons that support the channel. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.